So this is going to be another one of those videos that I'm just making because YouTube won't let me post a comment in my own comment section. And to be fair, it is a very long comment. I I did it in this Word document here, and then copied and pasted it into the comment section. And there was like this message in like red letters that came up, said something along the lines of cannot process this or having trouble processing this, something like that. So yeah, I think it was just too long. I don't think they're like censoring me this time around. But anyway, I got into this comment section debate with this guy who commented on my most recent video with the progressive purity test. And we're discussing things like, what does it mean to be progressive? What does it mean to be ageist? We're talking also about the concept of a resource-based economy. But the issue that has been taking up the bulk of the conversation concerns age gap relationships and the legalities surrounding them. I, of course, am pretty counterculture on this topic, to the point where people sometimes erroneously accuse me of being a pedophile, which, of course, I am not. Pedophiles are primarily into prepubescent children, and I'm not. That said, I am a 37-year-old virgin. I have never had sex with anyone of any age, and I probably never will. I hope I do someday, but I don't plan on violating any age of consent laws, and I don't have any age-based preferences. I just have a thing for good-looking ladies, and I typically don't know how old a good-looking lady is unless I walk over and ask her how old she is, which is something I usually don't get the balls to do the vast majority of the time. Frankly, I'd prefer it if ages weren't a legal issue, and I believe there's no good reason why age should be a legal issue. No, this does not mean I think people should be allowed to have sex with toddlers. It means we should be real about what puberty does to people. Okay, all that being said, let's have a look at this guy's comment. He starts off by saying,
"The various isms describe when one group of people is in a position of power and inflicts their will upon another, less powerful group at their expense."
And, when he says isms, I'm assuming he's talking about, like, racism, sexism. So he's probably not talking about, like, atheism or agnosticism. But anyway, in response to him, I said, not exclusively. You seem to be subscribing to an attempted redefinition that was developed a few years back to make certain bigots look like they weren't bigoted because they're, quote, among the oppressed. But it's still racist when a black guy hates all white people, and it's still sexist when a woman hates all men. That said, the original definition of ageism from back when the term was first coined is discrimination against people based on age. A current Oxford definition of ageism is prejudice or discrimination on the grounds of a person's age. This is pretty much how all known anti-ageism activists are using it. And when I say all known, what I really mean is all the ones that I know about. Okay. Activist Ashton Applewhite worded it, discrimination and stereotyping on the basis of age.
Ageism, discrimination and stereotyping on the basis of age. We experience it anytime someone assumes we're too old for something, instead of finding out who we are and what we're capable of, or too young. Ageism cuts both ways.
This is, of course, how I use it, and I'm not going to submit to a bigoted attempt at redefining all isms.
But what about these horny adolescent teenagers who want to fuck old people? They don't exist. Your whole premise is wrong.
That actually sounds like it might be a misunderstanding of my premise, so I will clarify. Horny adolescent teenage females are often sexually interested in males, even when those males are years or even decades older than them. Just like how horny adolescent teenage males are often sexually interested in females, even when those females are years or even decades older than them.
Sure, a 14-year-old girl might have sexual desires for the latest actor or pop star, but these are not the kinds of people who are interested in 14-year-old girls.
Some celebrities have in fact had consensual sexual relationships with 14-year-olds. For example, Elvis was in his 20s when he fucked a 14-year-old, and Bill Wyman from the Rolling Stones was in his late 40s when he fucked a 14-year-old. I'm not saying they crave specifically 14-year-olds just for being 14, But the point is, they were sexually interested in girls that just so happened to be 14-year-olds.
Last time I asked if you thought you would have better luck with middle schoolers after striking out with adults, and it sounds like your answer is yes.
I don't think that's framed right. I don't look at it as though I struck out with adults, so I'll have better luck with middle schoolers. I just know that the seemingly most horny boy-crazy girls I've ever met were all middle schoolers, and almost every girl that ever made moves on me was a middle schooler, even in my adult years.
You mentioned situations where an underage girl was into you, but from listening to you talk about this before, it sounds like that's something that happened like once 10 years ago from maybe not the most mentally stable person ever.
I'm not sure which specific girl you're talking about. It's happened enough times that I'm not sure I can remember all the times it happened. I've met a lot of boy-crazy girls from the other side of the counter when I'm at work, especially when I worked at a dine-in restaurant. I met an entire soccer team of them there. I've even occasionally met some boy-crazy girls at the mall. There were a few occasions where it was the girls that approached me. And to clarify, when I say they're boy-crazy, I don't mean they're mentally unstable. I just mean they're openly interested in sex and openly obsessed with guys and fawn all over them, regardless of what age or what ageist laws are in place. Like, when I asked the flirtatious girls on the soccer team how old they were, one of them said, "Oh, it doesn't matter." The other ones told me their ages, but they didn't seem to think it really mattered either. So, I'm not saying they crave older men specifically. They just don't seem to give a fuck how old a guy is, as long as they find him attractive. And sometimes the guy that they find attractive is years or even decades older than them. And I should probably add a clarification here, since I apparently have to be as thorough as possible to avoid being misunderstood or misrepresented. I am not saying literally all adolescents don't give a shit about age differences. I've gotten the impression some of them do. But suffice it to say, a bunch of them clearly don't.
The average person in the US starts having sex at age 17. It is lower in some parts of the world, but not by much. The youngest average ages come from the Nordic countries, where it is about a year earlier, about 16. In some places, it's as high as 22. The small number of people who start earlier are probably mostly doing it with someone close in age, not someone 20 plus years older.
Yeah, because people 20 plus years older than them aren't allowed to hook up with them. And who are they in class with? The only person in the classroom 20 plus years older than the 14-year-olds is the teacher. The students are systemically segregated by age divisions, so of course they're more likely to hook up with people closer in age to them. Our culture has engineered it that way.
So across different world cultures, there are still going to be very few people under 16 who are interested in having sex with an older man.
Wrong. Most adolescents are interested in sex with hotties, regardless of age. Hell, I just recently saw this live stream where this 14-year-old girl was talking about how attractive the men in BTS are.
Do you listen to BTS? Oh my god, I love BTS. Ah, they're so attractive. And I like their music. I'm only 14.
The men in BTS range from 23 to 28 years old, depending on the dude. I'm not saying she liked them because they were grown men. I'm just saying she has the hots for them, and they are grown men. So the fact that they're grown men didn't make them unattractive. That said, I saw an actual poll where 85% of women said they were comfortable with a 20-year age gap. 50% were comfortable with a 30-year age gap, 27% were comfortable with a 40-year age gap, 13% were comfortable with a 50-year age gap, and 7% were comfortable with a 60-year age gap. As for me, Gates McFadden, in her 70s now, is old enough to be a great-grandma, but she's still a good-looking lady. Would I turn down sex with a good-looking lady just because she's old enough to be a grandma? No, that wouldn't make any sense. There's nothing wrong with being old enough to be a grandma. I once had a conversation with a guy at work about this kind of thing who asked me if I'd ever fuck a woman in her 80s. I told him, as long as she's hot. This is similar to how a lot of teens and preteens think before they have their heads filled with rhetoric about preying on minors and being taken advantage of and too young to consent and other parental propaganda.
They do not magically become ready for sex on their 16th birthday. When they become ready may be different for every person.
Exactly.
But when writing laws, there is no way to create a formula that describes when each individual becomes ready.
I seem to recall reading a science article a while back suggesting that roughly 2.5 months into puberty would be sufficient. But to be fair, it can totally depend on what you mean by ready. You may be worried about stuff like, are they ready to get dumped? Are they ready to get cheated on? Are they ready to get their heart broken? Are they ready for rejection? Are they ready for a pregnancy or an STD? Are they ready to get bit, choked, and slapped? Are they ready for R. Kelly to pee on them? And those are actually all separate issues that people are either ready for or not ready for, regardless of age. And if they're not ready, they can be made ready through proper education. And thus, they can informedly decide on a case-by-case basis what they're ready for and what they're not ready for, what they want to consent to or not consent to. In response to a question about the long-term health effects of having sex at an earlier age than usual, medical doctor Alan Bruckheim says, "If childhood sex exploration, masturbation, or pure sex play has been pleasurable and without a frightening experience attached to it, then there should be no negative effects later in life. But if the early sexual experience is marred by a frightening episode such as the discovery by an adult, exploitation, shame, punishment or pressure into the act such as incest or rape, then an early sexual experience may lead to sexual dysfunction later in life. Feelings of shame, anxiety, inhibition, guilt, and remorse may lead to arrested sexual development. It may make the person unable to continue normal personal growth and leave him or her unable to achieve appropriate relationships involving trust, closeness, and positive sexual expression." And of course, one of the takeaways from this is that the cultural stigma surrounding kids getting sexual will be more harmful to them in the long run than the actual sex. The sex itself isn't going to harm them. Assuming, of course, we're talking about adolescents. Prepubescent children are a different story. If a person hasn't even started puberty, then sexual experiences can actually trigger puberty to happen early, which has led to some very shocking and unexpected pregnancies. Having sex way too early on can cause very serious physical damage, especially to the uterus. This actually includes a higher risk of uterine cancer. This is part of why I'm not going around trying to convince people that we should let adults fuck toddlers. But there's a very big noticeable difference between a toddler and a teen.
So they have to just pick an age that is as close of an approximation as they can get.
No, they don't. They can have a stage of consent based on puberty instead of an age of consent. Puberty actually used to normally be considered adulthood, and still is in some cultures. Don't get me wrong, I personally think it is a good idea to make a distinction between adults and adolescents, and that we should treat adults like adults, and we should treat adolescents like adolescents. But part of treating adolescents like adolescents means not treating them like children. There's no reason, though, that horny adults should get in trouble for having consensual sexual relations with horny adolescents. Kind of like how different skin colors don't mean that one race should enslave another, similarly, nothing about the differences between adolescence and adulthood implies it should be illegal for adults to have sex with adolescents.
It will be somewhat arbitrary, but so at any other age they pick.
Exactly. That's the problem with picking a specific age instead of using puberty. Remember, there are people going to jail for having consensual sex with other people below an arbitrarily arrived at age of consent. It's kind of a big deal. If you want to justify locking someone up, I for one require a better reason than, "This is the arbitrary number we've picked."
And dating a 16-year-old is still sleazy for an adult, even if it isn't strictly illegal.
He's saying this because we talked about how 16 is the age of consent here in Washington State. I of course, wouldn't have any problem dating a 16-year-old, so he's basically saying that would be sleazy of me. But anyway, my response is, that's just an opinion, and a fallacious personal attack on me that doesn't invalidate any of my points. If it's sleazy at 16, when does it stop being sleazy? 17? If it's still sleazy at 17, then what about 18? Is that sleazy too? When does it stop being sleazy? 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37. No number you pick will come with the empirical justification you would need to convince me that I'm being sleazy.
I have never heard of a 14-year-old girl protesting age of consent laws, and I have never heard of a grown adult woman who, on reflection, wished they had been able to fuck an older guy when they were 14. So you're being dishonest when you try to pass this off as something that anyone besides you want.
Now, it's dishonest to pretend I'm the only person in the world that wants this. I'm pretty sure you know that there are both men and women out there getting in trouble for having consensual sex with minors, and that some minors have even consensually married adults. You've even already admitted that some 14-year-olds take a sexual interest in actors and pop stars, so your inexperience with women and 14-year-old activists isn't anything to go off of.
A healthy adult will have grown up to be both mentally and physically stronger and wiser than a teenager. A healthy adult relationship is one where both partners are equals, thus one where the partner has also grown up beyond their teenage years. When an older man looking for a young girl, this inequality is not a flaw to them, it is the point. They want all the power in the relationship to be able to manipulate and control their partner.
Nope. Age doesn't give them this power. Do you feel like you have the ability to manipulate and control specifically teenagers? Because I sure don't think I have that ability.
Yes, in earlier times these relationships were normal. It was also normal to see women as inferior to men, and existing primarily for the purpose of making babies while men ran the world. If that's how you see women, then a teenager will meet your needs just fine.
That's not how I see women. And this concludes the section on age gap relationships, so we steer now into the topic of what it means to be progressive.
You get your own interpretation of what progressive means, but not an entirely new definition.
Huh. He, of course, seems to be implying here that I've just made up my own definition of what it means to be progressive, which is just not true.
If your views are different enough from other progressives, at some point that means you are not a progressive.
Fallacious appeal to popular opinion. Do you think of progressive as an officially recognized political party or something? Because it's not. You can have progressive Democrats, progressive Republicans, progressive Greens, progressive Libertarians, etc.
Which is okay, you don't have to be one, but why are you trying to steal the word?
Steal the word? I was actually promoting the concept of a more progressive society before I ever even heard of these other so-called progressives. Here, I will copy and paste a definition of progressive from a dictionary. As you can see, there's some different context to consider here. We can talk of progressive medicine, progressive economics, popular music, grammar, dance, cards, printing. Interesting. The first definition they provide comes in adjective form. It's happening or developing gradually or in stages, proceeding step by step. Similar to continuing, continuous, increasing, growing, developing, ongoing, intensifying, accelerating, escalating, gradual, step by step, cumulative. The second definition is of a group, person, or idea, favoring or implementing social reform or new liberal ideas. As a noun, a person, advocating or implementing social reform or new liberal ideas. Gee, sounds kind of like me. This is similar to innovator, reformer, reformist, liberal, libertarian, progressionist, leftist, left-winger, neoteric. That's a new one. And then the conversation on what it means to be progressive incorporates a conversation on a resource-based economy, also known as an RBE.
A RBE is naturally going to be more progressive if you're using your own made-up definition of the word progressive, where it is defined by supporting an RBE. But that is circular reasoning.
Strawman argument. An RBE is progressive because it meets the definitions that already appear in dictionaries, because an RBE would be a form of social reform.
Words are for communicating, which requires that both parties agree on their definition.
Well, if you think progressive is a specific officially recognized standalone political party, then we definitely don't agree.
If we make up our own definitions for words, then no understanding is communicated when we speak them to each other.
So stop making shit up.
Progressives, of course, would like to end poverty, and maybe non-progressives think they want to as well, but people don't agree what action will result in that outcome. Or in your case, a RBE is something they've never even heard of.
Agreed. Many of them probably haven't heard of an RBE. which is part of my beef with the so-called progressives at TYT, because they have heard of an RBE, and yet they don't promote it. And don't get me wrong here, the folks at TYT certainly support some policy proposals that are potentially more progressive than maintaining the status quo. I just think an RBE is even more progressive than the stuff they promote.
When you say you're going to end poverty, rape, war, murder, bigotry, etc., you sound like the leader of a religious cult.
Another distortive, fallacious argument lacking substantive critique of what was actually said and what is possible with an RBE. An RBE addresses the root causes of problems. It removes the incentives to do terrible things to one another. For example, a person that has access to things without a price tag has little to no reason to ever steal, or to kill for that matter, since most violent crime is poverty-related.
It's good that you see the value of testing these theories, but currently they are untested.
No, they're not untested. We still need to build test cities, but that doesn't mean the theories are untested.
And you still seem to be taking it on faith that everything will work out the way you imagine.
If by the way you imagine, you are referring to the idea that an RBE will end poverty, rape, war, murder, and bigotry, that's not being taken on faith. It's being taken on the fact that the root causes of those problems are addressed on a technical level in an RBE. If we eliminate the causes of these behaviors, then obviously those behaviors will cease to exist.
Many people throughout history have dreamed of solving these problems, and none have succeeded.
First off, it's not enough to dream, one must take appropriate action. And second, based on my studies of history, the primary methods I've witnessed for addressing these problems is to create laws, which is better than nothing, but it's usually not a real solution. Rather, it's what they do when they don't know the solution. That's actually a Jacques Fresco quote. Not knowing the solution, they make a law.
Instead of putting up a sign, drive carefully, slippery when wet, put abrasive in the highway so it's not slippery when wet. And if a person gets in a car that's drunk and the car oscillates a great deal, there's a little pendulum that swings up and back, and that'll pull the car over to the side. Not a law solution. Put sonar and radar in automobiles so they can't hit one another. Man-made laws are attempts to deal with occurring problems, and not knowing how to solve them, they make a law.
So Fresco didn't come up with laws to solve problems. He came up with solutions so that we don't need to create laws. That's not to imply that we should repeal all existing laws and tell people that they can kill whoever they want, but hopefully you get the point.
Various societies have succeeded in reducing these problems, sometimes significantly, but no one has gotten rid of them.
They never implemented an RBE as laid out by TVP. TVP, of course, stands for the Venus Project. We got to build self-sustaining communities where machines do all the jobs that nobody wants to do, and everyone gets access to things without a price tag since we don't have to pay machines. There must be a focus on abundance, and there must be no planned obsolescence.
Do you understand that you are claiming that where all others in history have failed, you, Brandon, will be the first to succeed?
Pretty sure I don't recall making the claim that I, Brandon, was going to personally succeed where all have failed. I thought we were talking about what an RBE would do. If I was in charge, I would try to get us moving in the direction of an RBE, but I'm not confident I'd be in charge long enough to see it through to full conclusion. A single presidential term is only 4 years, and ruler of the world isn't an electable political position so far as I can tell.
And you're going to do it by making YouTube videos?
Dude, all these straw man arguments are convincing me that you're not even interested in an honest conversation here.
I think you actually lack the courage of your convictions. If you're serious about, for example, wanting robots to automate more jobs, why don't you go get a college degree in robotics so you can help design these robots?
This question implies that the designs don't already exist, but they do.
We are fast approaching a time when human intelligence will be incapable of fully comprehending the rapid pace of events in the physical world. The human mind is far too simple to handle the complexities of information needed to operate a highly technical and advanced global civilization. self-erecting structures are but one inevitable result of the future direction of robotics, automation, and artificial intelligence. As these intelligent machines emerge from fixed positions in factories, they will be guided by satellites and directed to construction sites on land, in the sea, and in space. They will perform many of the functions of highly trained personnel with a speed and efficiency that is unimaginable today. They will construct our cities both on land and in the sea, dig canals, build bridges, operate factories and farms, transport passengers and freight, provide health care, and eventually be assigned the task of environmental and resource management. During this presentation, we will explore some visual concepts of the use of self-erecting structures within a global cybernated future as proposed by the Venus Project.
This future is not going to miraculously appear before you. Someone has to go through the slow, laborious process of building it first.
No shit. Multiple someones even.
You like imagining it, but you expect someone else to build it for you while you sit in the comfort of your home.
Actually, if we're talking about implementing an RBE, I'd be happy to help wherever my skills would come in handy, health permitting. But, last I checked, Joe Biden didn't have any intention of implementing an RBE, and neither does our governor, or any of the other elected political leaders we have in this country, or around the world for that matter. So, there probably won't be any job openings for that anytime soon.
Maybe this is why you want to be a YouTuber.
Different YouTube videos have different motives behind them.
Because it allows you to tell other people what you think they should do without requiring you to leave your home.
I actually like leaving my home, typically at least once or twice a day.
But fixing society's problems is going to require a lot of work that can't be done from your home.
Well, I'm poor, I'm not famous, and I have no political power, so I'm not really sure what I can realistically do at the moment apart from trying to raise awareness and correcting misconceptions. A resource-based economy is the kind of thing we can get people on board with by spreading the message online. You know, from the privacy of our own homes. Hell, that's how I found out about it. In fact, an entire global movement was born that way. Alright guys, thumb up the video if you liked it, thumb it down if you didn't, subscribe if you're not already subscribed, and turn on notifications if you want to be notified when I upload my next video.